All right. Welcome everybody to today's recorded webinar covering the update of Midwest Cover Crops Council's Cover Crop Decision Tool, Iowa's data. I'm Ethan Thies. I work for Iowa State Extension and Outreach and the Midwest Cover Crop Council. I'm joined today by Mark Licht, Extension Cropping Systems Specialist, Rajesh Chintala, Iowa NRCS State Agronomist, and Hillary Olson, Iowa NRCS State Soil Health Specialist. This webinar will cover what was updated in the tool and discuss the newly added cover crop species. We'll start with a little background on the Midwest Cover Crops Council Cover Crop Decision Tool for those who are unfamiliar with the tool. It is an online tool that assists farmers and advisors with selecting appropriate cover crop species to fit their goals and region. The tool will rank cover crops based on your goals and give you seeding dates specific to your county's climate data. Additional information for each cover crop species can be found by clicking on the species name in the selector tool. The information in the tool is collected from research and experiences from farmers in the state, which is what we just did in this most recent update. The tool can be accessed on the MCCC website, and there will be a link in the video description as well for you to access that and check out the updates to the tool. For a little background on the Iowa Decision Tool update this year, this winter, state experts in cover cropping, including Mark, Rajesh, and Hillary, met weekly from January until March to update the data in the MCCC Decision Tool, which was last updated in 2019. All of the data for each species was reviewed and updated, which included the recommended seeding date ranges, the ratings for each goal, the basic information for each species of cover crops, and their advantages and disadvantages. We're excited to share that we've also added 13 new species to the tool to provide farmers and advisors with information on new cover crop species of interest. Based on this update, NRCS is updating some cover crop guidelines as well, which Hillary and Rajesh can discuss.
Yeah, thanks, Ethan. Iowa NRCS is currently reviewing our cover crop guidance, including incorporating the changes to the seeding date recommendations that were updated with this last revision. So likely, so those seeding dates feed into our financial assistance guidance. So the seeding dates will likely be generalized across the state, but we are looking at making that, we're in discussion on that right now with folks across the state. And so that information, in addition to new species that will be added to our implementation guidance, all of that is in discussion right now, and that information will be provided to our staff later this summer, before the fall cover crop seeding window. So that's our plan.
Sounds great. And we can be sure to put out that information when you have it to our listserv as well. The seeding dates in the tool, which are now updated, we'll talk a little bit about how those seeding dates have changed as well. So the decision tool uses NOAA weather data to calculate the seeding dates for each county, which has been updated to reflect the most recent 30 years of climate data since the last update. A change was also made on how seeding dates are shown in the tool, and they are now specific to the individual county's climate data when you select your county in the tool. Before the update, counties were grouped by crop reporting district, so the weather data was averaged for that district and shown an average when you selected the county. The reliable establishment and risk to establishment seeding windows for each species have also been reviewed, and some of them have updated to match new research and experiences as well. So on to the exciting part of the tool update. We have added 13 new species to the Iowa list of potential cover crop species. That's included 5 grasses, spring triticale, proso millet, foxtail millet, pearl millet, and Japanese millet, 1 brassica, forage cabbage, 5 legumes, chickling vetch, lentils, balanza clover, sweet clover, and faba bean, and 2 other species, sugar beet and phacelia. So our cover crop experts today will be going over some of the pros, cons, and uses for these new cover crops, and that will continue our discussion here.
So I'll jump in here with, starting out with these species and then let the others kind of join as well. So the first species that we added was spring triticale, and this was triticale was already added, but it was the winter version or winter varieties that were added in previously. Now we've added in the spring ones. So this does match up better with the winter and spring barleys and winter and spring wheats that were previously included. And just maybe a comment on triticale versus wheat or barley. It is a little bit more winter hardy, especially in northern Iowa, than the winter wheat would be. And so it could be a nice alternative to cereal rye in the sense that it would not be quite as aggressive or have the biomass accumulation in the spring like cereal rye would.
This is also this crop allows interseeding. This is a good option to interseed in the cash crop. So that's the one of the advantage with the spring triticale.
All right, we're good on triticale. We'll move on to our new millets, all 4 of them.
So this is just a slight change maybe from what we had previously had, because I think in the past version we had kind of millets grouped as one species in there. So what we've really done is broken out the 4 common millet types, so foxtail, Japanese, pearl, and Pruzo. These actually all do have very different scientific names as well, and so it does make sense that we break them out like that. Maybe I'll start with foxtail millet specifically, because this one here does maybe tolerate some cooler conditions than Japanese and pearl millet, although Pruzo millet does tend to perform fairly well in more northern climates like foxtail would. Foxtail, like some of the other millets, it does tolerate drouthier conditions really well, although it one of its limitations would be is that it has minimal regrowth after cutting and or grazing.
One good thing with the foxtail millet as a cover crop, it is a non-host for a soybean cyst nematode, and then other pathogens like the root knot nematode and then sugar beet cyst nematode. So that's the one thing with the cover crop. Some of the cover crops act as a source for the host for this nematode based diseases. So this one is that's the one of the advantages. It doesn't host any nematode based diseases. So helpful for growing, in the rotation, the soybean crops like soybean in the rotation.
With Japanese millet now, one of the big things with Japanese millet is that it can do fairly well in somewhat poorly drained soils. So some of the other millets do like, the drier soils. They don't like the wet, especially as they're, germinating and going through some of that early development. But Japanese millet can withstand that and grows fairly well in those somewhat poorly drained soils.
The another advantage with the Japanese millet is it can be a good for grazing purposes, and also demonstrated really good weed suppression in the in the summer. I mean, next cash crop that follows in the rotation. So that's the one of the advantage but using Japanese millet as a cover crop.
On to pearl millet. Pearl millet really does not do well in wet soils. Those saturated ponded conditions it doesn't do well in. It really likes those drier conditions, so it has a very good drought tolerance rating with it. This is another one that it works fairly well for grazing. And then there's some potential here really with all the millets, but it's a little bit more notable with pearl millet in its ability to take up residual soil nitrogen just because it puts on a lot of biomass.
Yeah, it also serves as a good soil builder and also controls erosion. So one of the good option to choose as a cover crop because of erosion controlling opportunity with this crop.
And then on to Pruso millet. So again, this one does perform well or better in maybe northern Iowa than it would in southern Iowa. This is one that can perform very well on a variety of soil types. So it's a little bit more versatile in that standpoint. And this is one of the millets that maybe would be considered for a mixture or using in a mixture compared to a couple of the other types. Again, it's really good in drouthy environments. And then it has that grazing, very good for grazing quality as well as mechanical forage harvesting.
So Pruso millet doesn't require it can perform well even at the low fertility status of the soils. So it doesn't require much agriculture inputs such as fertilizers. So in that case, it's a very good option for use as a cover crop.
Maybe one other thing that I would add just on the millets in general is that all of these do really well in, I'll call it the warm season. And so as far as a cover crop, these are really the top ones that I go to if we get into prevent plant situations where we can't get corn or soybeans in, or maybe we had a small grain and coming after small grain harvest with one of these is a really good way to get really quite a bit of biomass, good coverage, good root growth through the soil.
All right. Moving on to our one new brassica forage cabbage.
Okay, yeah, forage cabbage. This is a nice brassica because it does produce a fair amount of biomass to it, probably a little bit more than we would maybe expect with, say, turnips or radishes, where those are more known for their tubers. The forage cabbage is going to be more known for that above ground biomass. It will likely have a little bit more above ground biomass than even kale. It has some really fast growth, and you still get that deep root growth for breaking up subsoil compaction. It should be noted though that I think of something that has a lot of biomass, especially in the fall, as it has some grazing potential. And forage cabbage does have some good grazing potential, but it can be problematic for livestock if it's grazed as a single species. So if considering forage cabbage for grazing purposes, it's probably wise to put it into a mixture with some other species just to help eliminate that problem there.
Probably also good to note that you'll find it in other states on the tool listed as Ethiopian or African cabbage, or in some seed sales listed as those species as well. All right, we'll move on to our legumes. First up, we have chickling vetch.
So, yeah, chickling vetch is not really a vetch. Surprise, surprise. Scientifically, it's got a different naming than hairy vetch or common vetch. It's much more related to peas or beans. This is a species that has really good heat and drought tolerance. And the caution I put out with this one is that it is a host for soybean cyst nematodes. And so if you've got soybean cyst nematodes at moderate to high populations, you probably do not want to be using chickling vetch.
Yeah, it is also good for weed suppression, and somewhat cold tolerant too.
All right, our next legume is lentils.
Okay, so lentils are one that I have a little bit of a hard time with because they're not necessarily a plant that thrives and is, they're not quite as robust. Having said that, they do have some very good drought tolerance. They can fix moderate amounts of nitrogen. And these are a species that do thrive in slightly cooler conditions, but they're not going to overwinter very well. And because of some of these characteristics, I tend to say that they probably work better in a mixture versus as a single species. And this may be a species that we would consider if we were looking for a spring seeded cover crop, at the end of March or early April, and we had some time to allow it to grow, before going on to the next, the next cash crop.
One advantage with this lentils is like their root system supports the mycorrhizal fungi growth, so that would be beneficial to increase the phosphorus availability for following crop, or especially when the soils are acidic and where the phosphorus availability kind of limited. So the lentils with the harboring vascular mycorrhiza kind of the micro biomes that helps increasing phosphorus availability in the soil for plants to obtain.
Our next species is Balanza clover.
Balanza clover is probably the species over the last, I'll say 5 years that has had a lot of attention given to it, a lot of interest in it. And we hear a lot about it from, quite honestly, Southern Illinois, Indiana, even parts of Southern Ohio. Our issue with it is that in Iowa, it's not necessarily going to overwinter for us. It may have a higher probability of overwintering in Southern Iowa, but it will not necessarily even be a guarantee in Southern Iowa. It's not likely to overwinter in Northern Iowa. I had some here in Central Iowa last fall that was planted, and I probably only had 5 to 10% of the stand that overwintered this winter here. So just be careful thinking about Balanza clover on where you're planting and whether or not it'll overwinter. Balanza clover does have some pretty good drought tolerance, and as far as being able to fix nitrogen is one of the better legumes to do that, especially when we get that spring biomass accumulation out of it. Because of that, it can have really, really good grazing potential, especially if we stick it in with a mixture that has some of the maybe some of the winter cereal grains like cereal rye or winter wheat, winter triticale.
So the pink and, the pink to white flowers of the balance of flower kind of are, more attractive for pollinators. So they are really good for creating a habitat for pollinators to visit the land, so that can help, even the cash crop surrounding area for pollination.
This is our last legume. We have sweet clover.
Yeah, so sweet clover, this one again can fix a fair amount of nitrogen. So that's a very big positive for it. It is a soil builder, and part of that's just because of its root system can be pretty extensive, as well as it has the ability to be grazed, especially in a mixture again. Also very heat tolerant, very drought tolerant. And where it may work as an interseeded cover crop is because it is very good in shaded environments. That's also why it will do a little bit better in a mixture as well. Sweet clover is a biennial, and therefore it will overwinter in Iowa, especially. When we talk about another new species a little bit later, it's also a biennial, but it would not overwinter, and that's sugar beets. But this one will. And then it does really well in low fertility soils as well.
Sweet clover is one of the crops in our list, or in the selection tool, suitable for frost seeding, along with the white and red clovers.
Oh, we did have one more legume, faba bean.
Yeah, so faba bean has been added really because of its high potential for nitrogen fixation. So that's a really good strength for it. If you look at it from some of the other characteristics and qualities, it doesn't necessarily have a lot of high qualities there. So from a cover crop perspective, it probably works best in a mixture where you're trying to get that benefit of having a legume that can fix some fair amounts of nitrogen, just because some of its other qualities are I'll say moderate in nature.
Okay, moving on. Mark already mentioned it as our other biennial. We have sugar beet.
Yeah, so this is the biennial that does not overwinter in Iowa. It requires a warmer climate to overwinter. Not as a cover crop, but as a sugar beet crop, for the sugar perspective, it will overwinter where they do seed production down in New Mexico, Arizona areas. But as a cover crop, in being a biennial, it's not going to overwinter in Iowa. The above ground biomass does make it a nice candidate for grazing. And then if the cattle are able to pull out that taproot, there can be some added benefit there too. Sugar beet is a very good scavenger for nitrogen. Another downside, or probably one of the main downsides of sugar beet as a cover crop, is that it is also a host for soybean cyst nematodes. And so if you have soybeans in the rotation, we have to be cautious of this species, just because of that propensity to increase those soybean cyst nematode populations.
Okay, I think our last one today is Phacelia.
So Phacelia is one of those species that when we talked about adding it, we all kind of raised their eyebrows and squinted a little bit of like, why are we going to add this one type thing? Phacelia is somewhat of a wimpy plant. And so as far as a single species, it's not going to be a plant that we want to be using as a cover crop. But if we put it into a mixture, it can do all right, and we can bring some benefits with it. It does really well in drought conditions and has some really good heat tolerance. And then as you can see, those purple flowers are a host for attracting many beneficial insects. And so that's, another area if you're looking at trying to bring in some of those beneficial insects with some of your other species that may not do as well. This would be good to add into that mixture.
It also helps for grazing too. The animals cattle can feed on these plants, so it's good for grazing.
All right, well, that covers all 13 of our new species. I want to thank the three of you for coming on and discussing those species and the update with us today. And we also want to thank everybody who participated in the update this winter, participating in those weekly meetings for almost 3 months to get the update completed. You can see those on the screen of Midwest Cover Crop Council, Iowa State University Extension and Outreach, Iowa Natural Resources Conservation Service, Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship, Albert Lee Seed, Practical Farmers of Iowa, Iowa Learning Farms, Dean Sponheim, Jack Boyer, Mike Paulson, and Brandon McHugh. And that wraps up our webinar today. Contact information for today's presenters can be found in the video description below.